737 Max crashes and other things, that the lack of training gets people into a problem. So if you weren't a Tesla driver and also weren't a pilot,
Mhm.
you're still smart enough to get out of your own way.
Yeah,
Which
but
which I think
I
this.
think what you just mentioned with the Max is a good thing to mention,
Mhm,
because these are 737 pilots that they're trained to
mhm,
look at stuff, to not trust everything, to be aware.
mhm.
And when something changed on the aircraft, a new system was introduced and they weren't informed of that, they
Right.
didn't know even to look. We like to say sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So if they didn't know what they even should be looking for, then
They couldn't
they couldn't
troubleshoot.
find it.
Right.
They didn't look. And
Some
that
people can
did have
barely
some
drive
issues
to
with
begin with.
737 Max crashes. So
Right.
I guess what we're getting at, and Mike's getting at too, is awareness. Having the people that use your product, whether it's a car or a plane or whatever, awareness helps the car actually perform better to its expectations, and helps the pilot or the driver
Mhm.
uh, aware of where the boundaries are.
Correct.
Um, but the second half of that I have to just mention, and I'll pass it back to you too. But which was when we train pilots too, you also have to know that the people have to be accepting of that responsibility. Even if they know where the boundaries are, they have to actively accept that responsibility
Sure.
every time the system is enabled. And that in of itself is part of the problem too.
Well,
So
the other problem is, I hate to say this, there's a lot of people on the roads today that are terrible drivers. Okay, no, but look, I'm saying this from a perspective of,
yeah, yeah.
they go out, they achieve their license, they never go through any other restructured training or testing or anything
Not
else,
required. Yep.
unless not required, unless they get themselves in a traffic school or
Have an
do something
infraction. Yep,
foolish.
yep.
Okay. So a lot of these people get on the roads and then they assume that, well, my car, and you can see some of their blasé attitudes, the way that they drive, they're all over the place, they're
Yeah,
erratic, they
yeah,
cut
yeah.
you off, they do whatever they think. And then they just simply assume that this vehicle is going to arbitrarily take over that position on the road and drive just like them and be as accurate as possible. Now, here's the problem. The sensory overload of some of these systems is they can't handle
Mhm.
those types of conditions, and we're still really at this learning curve situation where right now it is actually having a negative impact, they're saying, on people's perceptions
Yes.
of these auto
Yes.
drive systems, which could have a cascading effect actually. And I'm going to say this, into this eVTOL market that
Yep.
comes up when you try to say people are going to be safe in these six passenger cocoons with no drivers.
Yeah, chilling effect on innovation to
Innovation,
further go into
yeah,
EVs.
yeah.
I agree with you there.
So there's a
Yeah.
problem, because actually there was some market research done in 2014 that said that 80% of the, or I think it was 72% of the general public, said that they did not accept self-driving cars. Okay. Now that number in 2020 changed, and I think that it actually turned to a positive that said 57% people were willing to take on having some sort of driving aids. But now the other problem is saturation in the marketplace of these different lane assists, blind spot monitoring, emergency stop, all these other technologies that are considered self-driving at some level because they're able to be marketed at that, but they really don't have the ability to augment themselves to anything else but the most basic of traffic situations. So it's going to be problematic, and it's something that the industry is going to have to get their head around. But what do you think some of the things that maybe even Tesla could do to remarket their particular thing, or what type of training could be put in place to help people out in this new going to be automated driving marketplace, which is surely to grow with the new EVs?
Yeah, it's there's a lot of things to talk about there. I think
Sure.
it is worthwhile to let's just note that the let me bring it up here. The Alliance for Automotive Innovation is
Hmm.
just a not a company, but kind of a this 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 board puts up recommendations that the automotive industry doesn't have to adhere to. But one of the things they did is they tried to standardize. They put a motion forward that does exactly that. That maybe we should standardize
Right.
um, the terminology, or rather the technologies that achieve certain levels of automation. And if you guys are not aware here, there's multiple levels of automation for road cars. 0, which doesn't do anything, to 5. 5 would be a car that literally you just get in and it drives you completely wherever you want to go. And we're way away from that, which is fair enough.
Sure.
But they let out some recommendations for technology that gets us to like level 2, which is some stuff you're seeing on the market already. And really, that's the same idea: is to say, it's a step back and say, hey, everybody's making these cars and this technology, and it all works to varying degrees. Why don't we say, okay, if it does lane keeping assist on like the highway, then it has a name that says whatever. Maybe it's just lane keeping on the highway. Who
Right.
knows what? Right. But and then if it does auto brake while in lane keeping assist, then it has this name too. And then if everybody who makes this technology in their cars, different manufacturers, say our car does this, then you would know as a consumer, once you've read and knew about it, once you're informed about it, you would know, okay, that car does that, and I can be assured that if I get in the car and activate the system, I'll know what my responsibility is because I'll know what the limitations of the car is.
Hmm.
And so and dovetailing that into what you mentioned about me with like make my car, the Tesla Model 3, it is something that and as you mentioned earlier, I'm an informed user.
Sure.
I know from my aviation experience too that you have to know, even if something says it does something, you have to know where even those limitations stop.
Sure.
Whether it has a certain heat limitation, or maybe limitations where it goes into a certain range for a certain amount of time, and it can be in there 6 seconds maybe. These things you just have to know. And so if you take that kind of mentality towards cars and know, okay, this car will do this, but if this situation presents itself, it's not going to do anything about that, and
Well,
I have to take over in those cases. So you can imagine, as a pilot, we fly different things, but if you flew different aircraft and they had different capabilities, but they both said this is autopilot.
hmm
Well, that's something that the pilots need to know. Well, this autopilot isn't the same as that autopilot.
it doesn't do the same
So
thing.
saying that and relating to cars, right?
Yeah.
If you guys got in your car and it had just basic cruise control, you set the, you get on, you press the accelerator, it gets up to 55, you enable cruise control, and it says 55, and it keeps it there.
Hmm.
In the car that doesn't have any extra technology, that it'll just run to that car at the stoplight because it's just the
Doesn't know
accelerator
any
is
better.
55.
Well, so here's the thing,
So,
right?
but you need to you know that limitation,
right,
so you know to disable it or hit the brake. You know that stuff.
right. But
The
there's
two
something
parts
else.
of that is the limitation, but you also know you're still responsible for stuff.
Sure, but
So-
see, so here's the problem with human beings. We're predictive learners, right? I don't have to tell you what. So, and this is
Expectation bias, is that where you're going?
no, not even expectation bias,
Okay.
but almost partially, right? So here's the
Yeah.
difference. If I showed you a picture of a car, you know what a car looks like, right?
Okay.
You
Yeah.
know that because you've seen enough cars. You immediately associate car because you can predictively think that if you were looking at a street, you would expect to see a car in the street and not a tree in the middle of the street. That is part of the predictive.
Oh, yeah, I know where you're going with this.
Okay, so
Yeah.
the difference is that as predictive learners, we have an advantage over self-driving technology because it doesn't have any predictive learning built in, because that has to actually physically be coded into a module that needs to be placed inside the vehicle.
And the sensors that can detect that.
Correct. So the problem is that we predictively learn, but we use our perceptions, meaning our skin, our eyes, the way we feel, the way our body moves, our inner ear motion, and all that. And what we look at and see and how we're driving the vehicle, that all becomes one cohesive response to the environment, which innately is not built into these systems. And when you segment these systems out to, one has to follow the lane, one has to look at traffic, one has to observe traffic lights, one has to observe traffic signs, weather elements, all these other combined factors, pedestrians, all these
Bicycles,
things,
yeah, all that.
you're automatically predictively doing that in your head, and you have a good guesstimate of the fact that if you see someone on the corner and they start to move forward, likelihood is they're going to be in your path at the wrong time.
Mhm.
Okay. Whereas predictive learning in a vehicle doesn't have that sophistication yet
Yep.
to understand the nuance of just simply glancing out in a perceptive part of your vision. And the more we keep renaming them different things, the more we keep putting these new layers of saturation onto the driver, the more the driver actually loses and gets a little bit more concerned, because they let that little bit of information slip in the back of their mind. They think the car can do it. It can't. Accident.
Or it doesn't. And,
Yep.
and as we have AI systems running these,
Mm-hmm.
kind of trying to bring all the different inputs in, as Mike's mentioning, but the
Mhm.
sensor inputs for the car, and trying to make sense of it all and then decide what to do with the car. That's actually something, whether it makes sense or not, that's actually what your brain does every day.
Yes.
If you get up off this couch, if I get up off the couch and I walk into the room, I know this thing's in my way, so I got to move this out of the way. I know I got to open the door, but before I get there, I got to walk across the carpet. The carpet may actually grab my shoes a little bit more than, smooth floor would. But these are all things I know through experience, but also because I see things, and my brain brings all these things
Right.
in together, and I expect what I'll find when I get over there. So
Right.
just like Mike was saying about how the car doesn't really anticipate what people will do. You guys ever been on the road where you're driving down the highway and you're driving and you see a car maybe, you know, in the lane in front of you, but he's a few cars up, and you can just tell they're gonna change lanes.
Oh yeah.
You just know
Oh,
somehow.
yeah, you know, or
And
they're
then 2 seconds
tailgating.
later,
They're
the
there.
turn signal comes on and
Yeah.
they go into your lane. How do you know that? Well, that's
Mm.
something you get through experience, and you can maybe tell the way how close to the line they are, how close to your line they are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, these are things you perceive, but a car may not do that. And
Well,
those
so
are
here's one
some
better.
things that are outliers
Right.
that AI isn't good at yet, and they've a lot of talk about AI, how there's outliers, and those things are always going to be a problem.
Right.
So, yep, yeah.
Here's one other one. If you're driving on a road that's wet, you look forward and you see a puddle, and you think to yourself, "Oh man, there's standing water in that lane. That's probably going to be something I want to slow down for." Whereas these complicated, you know, four-wheel drive systems, they won't notice that that wheel is going to slip until it actually is at the point of slipping. Right? It registers speed. It looks at the amount of. It doesn't know how deep the water is. It just feels wheel slip and it goes, "Oh, time to compensate," which is already a little bit less of a time that it took you to recognize by looking a quarter mile ahead that there's standing water. So there's lots of these things to come into the conversation. It's a great article. Everybody should read it. Take a
Yeah.
look at it. Like, subscribe, follow. Let us know in the comments below
Yep.
what you think, because this paradigm is going to have to shape itself up for the next level of money for people looking to put into these automated systems, LiDAR. What's going to be the more complicated or less complicated systems that survive? And more importantly, how the regulations that are going to take place in the next period are going to transform what we know about self-driving vehicles, because what you're seeing happen with self-driving vehicles right now is more than likely going to dovetail exactly what's going to happen to the eVTOL market as that becomes pushed more towards this automated flying type, you know, environment, on-demand environment.
Yeah, and you have fully manual aircraft.
Yep.
Fully manual cars driving on the road with fully automatic cars.
Yes.
Right, so that's a whole nother thing. And there's a few links down below, guys. Check that out. Where there's links down to the board that talks about how to categorize things, the levels, and the nomenclature. So have a look at that. We do need to move on, but we'd like to know what you guys think. So put your comments in the type your comments down below, of course, and let us know what you think about the automated car issues. So yeah,
there you go.
Thank you.
All right, so here we go with the last one. Corey's going to talk to you about the brand new redesign
Brand
Lamborghini
spanking new
Diablo. I mean,
Countach.
Countach.
Yeah, so that wasn't actually a slip. That was on purpose. This comes to us from New Atlas. It's there's articles everywhere, but it's basically the Lamborghini Countach, which we started to cover a few days ago. Now we have some actual pictures of it. It says it roars back to life, to the future as a hybrid, 800 horsepower hybrid. So sounds cool. Sounds like a hybrid. We got to looking at some pictures, and it doesn't look bad. But immediately, I'm thinking to myself, this is the picture of the rear of the car, and I'm like a Diablo to me. Like a lot like a Diablo. I mean, one could possibly argue the general shape of Lamborghinis tend to be kind of the same. But I can't, even the side profile, I really just can't forget. Like, it looks like a Diablo ST or something. It doesn't strike me as a Countach.
No.
So you keep going around, you look at the front. It doesn't look bad, don't get me wrong.
No.
But I'm just like, it's a Diablo.
It is.
It's like a Diablo, so
I think
I could be totally off base. What do you guys think in the comments? Let us know. But yeah, Mike, what do you think?
So the first thing that I sent it scored the other night, and I was like, I don't know. Look, the back end looks like a Countach, right? The tail end.
Yeah.
This view is the only view that I think it really looks like a redesign of that car of old, right?
Yeah.
However, when you go to other views, and I'm going to show you guys specifically what I'm talking about, you'll see this other view that's coming up, which is the dip. It's this dip in the front end. So if you look at the front end, how that mirror kind of, that little down swoop, right? And right in the lower part of the Countach was always flat. And the Diablo is the one that introduced that dip right, past the A-pillar. And the problem is those big aft side scoops were only in the later edition Lambos, not necessarily all the new ones. And it lends itself more towards looking like a Diablo. And to me, I was like, wow, I'm really surprised they didn't just totally flatten and round out the Lamborghini Countach as we knew it, and just say that would have been perfect.
Yeah, we were thinking, we were talking, and we are like, if they were just taking a Countach outside, and just modernize some of the shape, so you could tell that it was modernized.
So okay, so here I'll give you another prime example. The Ford GT40.
Yeah.
that was a car that that in both the iterations that have come out since, it looked like, oh, this is another coming of the GT40. Like it actually held on to some of the design elements.
Yep.
Maybe not this last version, but the version before that was actually spot on, right? But this one is now, and look, I just felt like we got a little slighted on this one. That's all. They could have done a little bit better, I think. And here, let's do a little bit more here. So this is the Lamborghini Diablo, the
That's
model
the
here.
Diablo, yeah.
That's the one we're talking about.
Yeah, that's the Diablo.
That's the Diablo. Okay, and
Got a rear picture of that?
I do actually. I have a couple. So, and the problem is that that's not necessarily an ugly car.
No.
No, not at all.
We're not saying anything that the cars aren't all attractive.
Yeah, the car's gorgeous. But if we look at so here's that dip. This is that dip by the mirror that I'm talking about. I want to go to live chat. No, I didn't want live chat. Look, they put live chat right where the.
Can you scroll? Yeah.
There you go. Look, so this is that dip that I'm talking about. That little dip in the mirror, whereas the old Countach used to be flat, right? So if you go over here and you take a look, and you look at that dip right here in that same kind of proportion, you see that big dip, and it just kind of shows up as Diablo. So now the other one you said you wanted the back end of the car, right?
Yeah, if there's a rear end shot.
There you go, rear end shot of the Diablo. And let's go see if we can find the rear end shot of this one over here. God, it looks. Maybe we're being too tough on the car.
No, I know. I am. I'm
There
just
you
trying
go.
to reiterate that the car looks good.
Yeah.
It doesn't look bad. It's good.
They captured that part, but these high belt lines, I think that they went a little too high. I think they just didn't do the car enough justice. Just my thoughts.
Yeah, maybe we're being a bit too critical.
Are we being mean?
I don't know. It's still nice. What's the price on this baby?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Don't ask me. It looks pretty.
Okay, here.
It's a hybrid.
I'm
It's gonna
pretty
be
sure
fast.
it was 2 point something if I'm not mistaken.
What?
Let's find it.
Wait, is it 2.5?
2.64 million.
See, now this is
So now just to end at my part, I'll give it back to you. But if you had an 800 horsepower Rimac Countach, nice, or a 2.5 million Nevera Rimac,